Hello, my girls. Um, I am Marisah Burrough. If I have not met you yet, I am part of the leadership community here and to help with placement. Some of you may know my husband over me, but Blake is my husband, one of the pastors here. Um, Okay, so I'm going to be talking through some of the harder questions we ask God about grief and sorrow. So, what I want to invite you ladies into is just notice your body while I talk. Take notice of any racing heartbeats, take notice of sweaty palms, shaky legs, um, take notice of any anger you may feel or tears that are welling up. Just take notice of your bodies with me. And there's going to be some ministry time later on in the morning, so there's plenty of time to bring those reactions and memories to Jesus. So many of you know my story, especially if you were at the women's brunch when I shared. So I'm not going into like timeline or anything, but what I want to do is speak of the more intimate moments where I have questioned God's goodness and have felt isolated. So we each have a story with suffering and grief. You may be tempted to compare your grief to mine, but all of our stories are different and unique. Your suffering is unique to you, and it is a gift that we each have permission to lament our own stories. Our church aims to honor each other's stories as one of our values, and you probably saw it, or at least you entered through the front doors where it says, you have a story, it matters to God, and it matters to us. So pray with me. Father, thank you for creating us uniquely different. We each carry different stories. We're all bringing different things into this room together this morning, Father. Will you just prepare our hearts? Will you remove any comparison between us, Father? Will you make known to us the work and the healing that you want to provide? In your name, amen. So I grew up, as most little girls do, playing with babies, feeding, rocking them to sleep. When my little brother was born and would wake up crying, I said, my baby is crying, and I would take care of him. When I was in college, I was so interested in birth stories that I actually watched a lot of birthing videos. And many of my first jobs in high school and in college were doing kids' camps and babysitting. So I was born with the desire to be a mother. About 2 years into our marriage, we decided that we should start trying for the first of our many kids that we wanted. About 7 months into trying, I got a positive on a Christmas Eve morning, and we told a few friends that day, and then the next day, Christmas morning, we told Blake's family that we were pregnant. However, a couple days later, I ended up not being pregnant. We had to go back and tell his family, and then I had to call my family and tell them all that happened. So after that, it led to a season of trying everything to get pregnant, from fertility smoothies to tracking my basal body temperature to any supplements that said would help. After a year with no success, we started a journey of doctor appointments and tests. I remember clearly on a Sunday afternoon when Blake missed the call from our fertility specialist who left a voicemail on his phone, and all I heard were the words infertile. I gave my knees out and fell to the floor and sobbed. This was my first real and personal big encounter with grief. I had to navigate the death of a good godly desire. We are now in our 10th year of infertility. We've had 2 failed adoptions, and we've fostered children. So I do say that we've parented 5 kids. And I have a little picture up there. Those are all of my babies. So one was in Oklahoma, and the next 4 all happened here in North Carolina. So I know some of you knew them and remember them as well. The last 10 years have been filled with earth-shattering pain. I can't tell you how many times I've cried in bathroom stalls or public places, how my eyes automatically divert when I walk past the baby section at a grocery store. There are constant reminders all around me that I'm living in a pain of unmet desires and the feeling of attached children being ripped from my chest. We've nested and decorated 3 different nurseries and 4 different types of kids' rooms, and now most of those things are collecting sawdust and spiderwebs in our garage. Grief and sin, we deal with sin, or we deal with grief in many different ways. So this is my story, but we're all familiar with grief. We all face unmet desires and the loss of people we love. Maybe you grieve your marriage, or crippling medical issues, or you're PCSing over the summer. Whatever your story is, you've come across some amount of grief in your life. So how do we typically respond to grief? We either try to control our circumstances or avoid our emotions and push them down. We can also numb out in times of pain, and through distractions, we can turn to comforts and idols to cope. We might think that if we do the right thing, God will fix our problems. That is thinking legalistically. Or we might feel entitled to something because of our suffering. We might even take justice into our own hands and feel justified in taking revenge or getting even when we experience injustice or pain. We may also expect our spouses, our friends, and our loved ones to meet all of our emotional needs and fix what we're going through. But what does the Bible say? Did people in the Bible actually grieve? And what happened? What did they do when they grieved? The answer is yes, people in the Bible have experienced great hardship. The Bible is one long tale of what God does with his grief over sin, suffering, and death. One of the first 2 people that may have popped into your head may have been Job or David's suffering. But since this is a feminine virtue conference, I thought we would dig into Hannah. We meet Hannah in 1 Samuel. You can turn there if you'd like, but I'll have it up on the screen. She is a woman who also happens to be infertile and cries out to God. So let's read her story. We'll start in 1 Samuel 1, 2, and read through 16. He, Elkanah, had 2 wives, the first named Hannah and the second Peninnah. Peninnah had children, but Hannah was childless. This man would go up from his town every year to worship and to sacrifice to the Lord of armies at Shiloh, where Eli's 2 sons, Hophni and Phinehas, were the Lord's priests. Whenever Elkanah offered a sacrifice, he always gave portions of the meat to his wife Peninnah and to each of her sons and daughters. But he gave double portions to Hannah, for he loved her, even though the Lord had kept her from conceiving. Her rival would taunt her severely just to provoke her, because the Lord had kept Hannah from conceiving. Year after year, when she went up to the Lord's house, her rival would taunt her in this way. Hannah would weep and would not eat. "Hannah, why are you crying?" her husband Elkanah would ask. "Why won't you eat? Why are you so troubled? Am I not better to you than 10 sons?" On one occasion, Hannah got up after they ate and drank in Shiloh. The priest Eli was sitting on a chair by the doorpost of the Lord's temple. Deeply hurt, Hannah prayed to the Lord and wept with many tears. Making a vow, she pleaded, "Lord of armies, if you will take notice of your servant's affliction, remember and do not forget me, and give your servant a son. I will give him to the Lord all the days of his life, and his hair will never be cut." While she continued praying in the Lord's presence, Eli watched her mouth. Hannah was praying silently, and though her lips were moving, her voice could not be heard. Eli thought she was drunk and said to her, "How long are you going to be drunk? Get rid of your wine." "No, my Lord," Hannah replied. "I am a woman with a broken heart. I haven't had any wine or beer. I've been pouring out my heart before the Lord. Don't think of me as a wicked woman. I've been praying from the depth of my anguish and resentment." What do we see her doing here? Well, this is a lament. Hannah is lamenting in this passage. She chose to take her pain and her broken heart to God. She actually poured her heart out to him, and she pleaded with him to hear her, to see her, to bless her. Lament bridges the gap between sorrow and promise. Dallas Willard says, "Lament is a prayer, a statement of faith. Lament is the honest cry of a hurting heart, wrestling with the paradox of pain and the promise of God's goodness." So usually when we experience grief, there's two really big questions we ask ourselves. God, where are you? And if you're truly good, then why is this happening? We're met with the first main question, God, where are you? When Hannah begs God to pay attention to her in verse 11, when she says, "God, take notice of me, remember and do not forget me." She is also tormented or taunted by her rival, as the Bible describes Peninnah. Her husband Elkanah loved her and even offered double portions for Hannah. He doesn't like to watch his wife suffer, and he would come back from his trip to the temple year after year, and again, there would be no change. And Hannah is still grieving. Even her husband, who was full of love and pain for his wife, could not understand this deep grief Hannah was experiencing. There have been years after years when I've put my hand over my belly and asked God to fill it with life. Each month, I am met with pain and the death of a dream. I've escaped from baby showers and child dedication services to bathroom stalls and cried, "God, remember me." There's also been times where I've tried to bring people into what I'm experiencing, but I'm met with even further isolation. We were created to live in a beautiful garden, and instead, we live in brokenness, longing for healing, hope, redemption, and beauty. This wilderness I talk about is living in between the Garden of Eden in Genesis and the Garden of Life to come in Revelation. This wilderness and isolation is intersected, though, with another garden, the Garden of Gethsemane. Gethsemane is the garden where Jesus was met with isolation from his closest friends, and in his flesh felt isolated from the Father. This isolation from his closest friends is written about in Matthew 26:36 through 46. Then Jesus came with them to a place called Gethsemane, and he told the disciples, "Sit here while I go over there and pray." Taking along Peter and the two sons of Zebedee, he began to be sorrowful and troubled. He said to them, "I am deeply grieved to the point of death. Remain here and stay awake with me." Going a little farther, he fell down and prayed, "My Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me, yet not I will, but as you will." Then he came to his disciples and found them sleeping. He asked Peter, "So you couldn't stay awake with me for 1 hour? Stay awake and pray so that you won't enter into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak." Again, a second time, he went away and prayed, "My Father, if this cannot pass unless I drink it, your will be done." And he came again and found them sleeping because they could not keep their eyes open. After leaving them, he went away again and prayed a third time, saying the same thing once more. Then he came back to the disciples and said to them, "Are you still sleeping? See, the time is near. The Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Get up, let's go see. My betrayer is near." Right before he is betrayed and arrested, Jesus takes Peter, James, and John to the Garden of Gethsemane. He tells the three with them, his three closest friends, that he is deeply grieved to the point of death. Jesus tells them to wait and protect him while he prays. Jesus checks on them 3 separate times, and every time he finds them asleep. He is first betrayed and disappointed by his friends in his most sorrowful moments, when they could not keep watch or pray for him. While Jesus is on the cross, he also felt alone. Matthew 27:46 says, about 3 p.m, Jesus cried out with a loud voice, my God, why have you abandoned me?" Jesus willingly entered into suffering and death to bridge the gap between our sin and the Father. Because of Jesus and the gift of the Holy Spirit, we will always have the presence of God. And although we may feel alone, it is not true. Our union with God cannot be broken, and he is actively pursuing all of our hearts. In Mark's account of Jesus' prayer in the Garden of Gethsemane, it says in verses 35 and 36, he, Jesus, went a little farther, fell to the ground, and prayed that if it were possible, the hour might pass from him. And he said, "Abba, Father, all these things are possible for you. Take this cup away from me. Nevertheless, not what I will, but you will." This is the second question. If God is good, then why is the suffering happening? Jesus knows the goodness of God, and he falls to the ground begging God to remove the suffering from him. This is a lament prayer. Jesus, in his anguish and desperation, says, "God, you are good. You have the power. I know you do. I've seen you bring dead people to life. I've seen you feed thousands with nothing. I know you can remove this from me, won't you?" Have you experienced this kind of desperation? When you know God has the power to change your circumstances, to remove your suffering from you, so you fall to the floor begging God to pay attention like Hannah and to take this cup of suffering so you can be healed. I distinctly remember one day when I was sitting on a couch begging God to remove my suffering, to take away my infertility, to take away the thing that makes me different than my friends, to answer my heart's desire to be a mother, to feel a baby move inside of my belly. God led me up off the couch and into the empty nursery we had set up. This was a day that we decided the door would be better closed, so I turned the knob and fell to the nursery floor crying out. I remember saying, "God, you're powerful. Why is this happening to me? I've seen you heal others. Won't you heal me? Won't you remove this cup of suffering from me?" One of the things I heard clearly was, "Cling to me. Cling to me." So this morning, where do you feel abandoned? Where do you feel different than others? Where are you questioning God's goodness to you? These prayers, although they might not seem like it, are in fact an act of worship to God, because you're turning to him, taking your complaint against God to God, all while knowing he has the power to change your circumstance and remove your suffering. Turning to God is actually the first step in a lament prayer. In the book Dark Clouds, Deep Mercy, the author simplifies the pattern of a lament prayer. He says, turn, complain, ask, and trust. Turning to God may be actually the most difficult step. The author says, prayerful lament is better than silence. But there's also the reality of us not wanting to let go of something. Maybe that thing that we're holding is the only thing we have left of a person. So it actually feels good to control what you can feel and have that power over your grief. You're not ready to get over it. So we protect our memories and have some control. We tend to hold it dear to us. Complaining is when we bring our questions, our frustrations, emotions to the Father. He isn't shocked by what you feel or by your circumstances. Complaining to God actually has the power to strengthen our communion with Him. He wants that relationship with us. The third kind of pattern is ask. Ask with boldness and expectation. Some of us might feel like they don't hear from God because they haven't even asked directly. Voice your desires and your needs to God. Ask the giver for grace, justice, help, forgiveness, restoration. But also just let him what you want. Let him know what you want and just see if he's going to answer it or not. And then we lastly trust. Then we make the choice to trust. Lament helps us practice active patience. Trust looks like talking to God, sharing our complaints, seeking God's help, and then recommitting ourselves to believe in who God is and what He has done. Even as the trial continues, lament is how we endure. We read Jesus' lament in Mark earlier. Jesus turned, complained, asked, and ultimately trusted when He said, "Not my will, but yours." Michael Card, in A Sacred Sorrow, says, "In lamenting, we go from I or me to thou. The self, exhausted of its emotional energy, seems to collapse in the presence of the one who is there, seen or unseen all along." Card also says, true worship begins in the wilderness. Praise is almost always the answer to a plea that arises in the desert. When you and I choose to lament, we engage our suffering biblically. We will exhaust ourselves complaining and asking, then, as Card says, collapse into the presence of God who is there the whole time. I call these full circle prayers. When I cry out to Jesus and then I experience God's presence, and once again, He reorients my heart towards Him, and I no longer see my circumstance as bigger than God, but instead through His presence, I see that God is bigger than my circumstance and emotions, and He actually leads me back to worship. Jesus has changed me over the last couple of years. He's done some deep identity and emotion work in me that I don't have time to get into this morning, but if you're curious, I'd love to sit down with you. But through lament and close friends, and most importantly, Jesus, I can say that although my circumstances have not changed, I am closer to Jesus than I was before. Actually, while I wrote this over the span of like a month and a half or whatever, we actually went back to the fertility doctor and did more tests to confirm just how actually infertile we are. So Jesus has given me lots of ways to practice lament in preparation for this talk. But I am more confident in Jesus than I ever have been. And I know that Jesus' presence is the actual true gift. Hear me say this: desires are terrible masters and can lead us down a selfish, bitter path. I know because I was heading that way. Even good and godly desires are bad when they take control. One of my favorite verses is Psalm 51:17. The sacrifice pleasing to God is a broken spirit. You will not despise a broken and humbled heart, God. When you and I are in the wilderness, the sweet, pleasing aroma to God is lament. He will not abandon you. He will give you the true gifts of presence, love, comfort, and joy. When we lament, we imitate Jesus. Jesus led through death and calls us to daily lay down our lives. Death is where greatness begins. Much like a seed that has to die first before it sprouts, we must daily die to ourselves to begin to bear good fruit. We must not only learn how to lament biblically with those who are close to us who are grieving as well. It is a gift that we do not all suffer at the same time. That means that while I may be currently walking through suffering, you may not. Or Blake and I experience this when one of us have a really sad day and the other one is fine. Or we may go through seasons or stints where we may be more sad or angry than the other. Because of this, that means that that you will suffer while your friends aren't, and vice versa. Your friends may be suffering while you are at a really good and full place in your life. So maybe you're here and you're not experiencing any type of grief this morning. You're just curious what it looks like to be present with your friends who are. First of all, thank you for your desire to just be a good and faithful friend and ask those questions. Michael Card says, the degree to which I am willing to enter into the suffering of another person reveals the level of my commitment and love for them. If I am not interested in your hurts, I am really not interested in you. So then what does it look like to enter into the suffering of another person? I think first we can offer some curiosity. Sometimes it's refreshing when I'm asked questions. It lets me know you're willing to go deep. I'm a deep feeler kind of person. And you're also not afraid of stepping on landmines. It also reflects that you're not going to assume how I feel or where I'm at spiritually. I think another way we can be present is through silence and listening. And this can be hard to do, but it goes a long way. To actively listen and not share advice may even require one of the tools I occasionally use, which is chewing on a piece of gum, just to be a helpful reminder that my mouth is better closed when I am with someone who is sitting through grief. Be silent. By being silent, you can also be aware if the sufferer does or does not want to talk about it in the moment as well. So you're listening, and you're also listening to the Spirit. Most importantly, pray. Pray for your hurting friend often, and pray bold prayers for them out loud. There's been full seasons or years where I've been too exhausted from asking God to take this suffering from me. And then someone will pray boldly for me out loud, and it just reminds me how long it's been since I've asked. And I'll often say, I'll drift off of your hope there, but your prayers actually have the power to renew hope in hurting people. There is a point in a relationship where you may just also have to name the different circumstances you're in. And just say, we're in it together, we're committed to each other. If you're not relationally fighting for honesty, the friendship will most likely be short-lived or surface level, avoiding each other's emotions and realities. I've choppily and awkwardly walked through multiple pregnancies and adoptions with friends and had to practice spirit-filled joy while also being empty-handed. Often not well, but part of that commitment to each other is also just extending grace when one of us will mess up. I'm still having conversations with friends that I've hurt and been hurt by when I was controlled by my suffering. We all do this messily. Nothing on this side of glory is perfect. We are all in the wilderness, desiring to live in the beauty we were created for, without suffering. And the good news is it's coming. Jesus is coming. In the meantime, we practice lament, crying out to our Creator, recommitting ourselves to trust Him and receiving His presence. The good Father is a good giver. Revelation 21, 3-5 says, "Then I heard a loud voice from the throne. Look, God's dwelling is with humanity. He will live with them. They will be His peoples, and God Himself will be with them and will be their God. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes. Death will be no more. Grief, crying, and pain will be no more, because the previous things have passed away." Then the one seated on the throne says, "Look, I am making all things new." This is the very hope we cling to. Our suffering will not be forever. Instead, we will live with our Father in the new creation, without tears or death, but surrounded by beauty, healed, and worshiping our God, our holy God together. Pray with me. Father, thank you for just how good and beautiful you are. You are a holy God, creator of each of us, holder of each of our stories. Father, thank you for the presence that you offer. Thank you for your gifts. Thank you that as we choose to turn to you, as we choose to trust you, Jesus, you are here already. Jesus, you are ever present in our lives and in our suffering. And that can be hard to hear, hard to see, hard to feel. But Jesus, you are here and present the entire time. Help us trust you. Help us recommit our trust to you, Jesus. Yeah, in your name, amen. I also want to mention, I have a resource slide. These are 4 of really helpful books that were good to me when I was going through difficult seasons. And then there's plenty of laments in Psalms, but these are just a few that I picked. So if you guys, it might be helpful just to take a picture, write it down, but in the kind of quiet time here in a little bit, that might be a helpful time just to read and pray through some of those.